So, I want to talk a little bit about childhood influences, because what happens to us in early childhood very often dictates the sort of life that we lead. So when you think a child first starts to learn, so what sort of age do you think a child starts to learn?
In the birth.
In the womb, yeah, absolutely. And at one time they used to feel that the only thing that went through into the placenta was nourishment for the child. What they've now discovered is that the thoughts and the emotions of the mother are also transmitted into the unborn child. So that means if, for instance, a mother really wants a baby and she's really looking forward to it and she's very relaxed and very happy about it, very supportive, then those chemicals, those emotions are actually transmitted into the baby. On the other hand, if the mother is very fearful and maybe she doesn't want the baby, maybe she's not supported, then those emotions and feelings are also transmitted into the fetus. And it's really Mother Nature's way, which is very clever, of preparing the unborn child to the world that the mother perceives it to be. So it's preparing the unborn child to be fearful, because the mother thinks the world is a dreadful place. You know, there's all these negative things going on. So all of this is transmitted into the unborn baby. And then, of course, the birth itself can be quite traumatic. It depends on whether it's a very simple birth, very straightforward birth, or whether it's complicated. And then right from the moment a child is born, they start to observe everything that's around them. And within a few hours of being born, and you'll see, if you ever see a little baby, they will stare at the mother or the father. And what they're looking for are indications, facial indications and feelings that they can actually interpret as being safe or not safe. So it's amazing that all of this is being perceived by a little tiny toddler. The other thing that we found out is that when we were first born, probably for the first 6 or 7 years, everything that we see, we hear, we feel, everything that we experience is just downloaded into our subconscious mind. So there's no filters, nothing stops anything coming in. And our conscious mind can absorb, they say, about 40 bits of information a second. So as adults, we know we can observe 40 different bits of information. And in those first 6 years, the unconscious mind can absorb 40 million bits of information a second. So everything that goes on is simply dumped into our subconscious mind. And what happens then is that as we go through life, it's the subconscious mind that is comparing our thoughts and our experiences. So everything you do, on some level, subconscious level, it's being compared with what you were thought of or told when you were very young. So our lives are often, I'll say predetermined, but a lot of what happens in our life and happens to us is because of the information that we took into our subconscious mind when we were tiny. And that can be very positive or it can be very negative. So the good news is that we can change our conscious mind. We can actually change those conscious feelings that are there. Sorry, those subconscious feelings. So one of the things that as parents we need to do is to make sure that as we're bringing up children, we actually are aware of what influence it can have on them. Because often we will say things, we'll do things that we perhaps don't really mean it, but nevertheless the child interprets that as being either a negative or a positive thing. So if, for instance, a mother continually says to the child, "Oh, go away, I'm busy, go away, I'm busy," at some stage that child starts to feel that they're not wanted, they're being rejected. And so in later life, that can emphasize feelings of rejection. They look for rejection in later life and find it, because that's what they've been taught to look for. And I think as parents, very few people, I think, are consciously trying to hurt their children. You know, it's a natural thing to want to be a good parent, but we often bring them up in ways that perhaps are more destructive than we intend. I remember back in England a few years ago, I was walking down one of the roads, and on the other pavement I could hear this little kid crying, and his mother was dragging this little child, probably maybe 3 or 4 years old, and this child was screaming and the mother was dragging on, and she shouted out, "I wish to God I'd never had you." And I thought, well, that one sentence can probably really affect the rest of that child's life, because on some level it's taking in, I'm not wanted, I'm not loved. So we need to be very much aware of what's happened to us or what's going on in our lives could have been created, or most probably would have been created in a very early stage of our lives. They reckon that a 3-year-old, because we're working on our subconscious minds, a 3-year-old can learn 3 languages at the same time and get the grammar right, get the syntax right, everything. Once we get to about 7 or 8, we struggle with learning a new language. So we're beginning to learn an awful lot about what happens in those very early days. And so I thought it'd be interesting just to think about your own childhood, if you can, and think about things that were said to you as a child, things that perhaps have influenced as you've grown into an adult. One of the things that I was born during the Second World War, one of the things that was drilled into me was that money doesn't grow on trees. I can hear my dad saying that even as I speak. What do you think that is interpreted as an adult? What do you think, what effect has that message had on me?
Scarcity.
Yeah, scarcity, absolutely. Lack, if you like, particularly to do with money. You know, as Kim will tell you, even today, as an adult, I turn lights off. You know, I sort of, nobody's in the room, I flick and the lights on, I turn it off. Now, I don't think about it, I just do it. And it's not necessary to do that. But on some level...
It's not necessary to do that when somebody's in the room.
Well, this is true. I don't think I do that very often.
Yes.
But on some level, that was so entrenched into my being born. I mean, I was one of 3, and things were one of 4 boys. Things were 4 boys, yeah. One of the things, it was tough being brought up in that particular time. But that was something, and my dad didn't do that. He was a generous man, but we didn't have a lot of money. And so that saying that he kept saying to us, "Can I have this?" "Well, you know, money doesn't grow on trees." And it's just been imprinted, if you like, into my subconscious mind, so it's there. So what are some of the things, let's start with you, Sammy, what are some of the things that you remember that were said to you as a child? And each one of those has some effect on you, and you all know the limitations it puts upon you with having these sort of deeply seated beliefs. And they weren't necessarily put there to harm you. Your parents didn't do it on purpose to make you feel fear or control or whatever it was. They did it because their parents told them, probably. But the good news is, and the work we'll be doing this afternoon and tomorrow will help you shift some of these really deep beliefs, and that's really empowering for you. The other thing which I found is, as I say, I've got 3 brothers, and when we get together and we're going to have a pint, we talk about our childhood, as you do, and you may have experienced this with your own brothers and sisters, but our perception of our childhood is quite different. You know, I think we had a great childhood. I mean, it was hard, but it was a great childhood. one of my brothers thinks it was awful. Now, I didn't see him being brought up any different to me. He wasn't treated any differently to myself or my other brothers, but his perception, when we talk about, and he tells me things which I know never happened. But to him, it happened. It was absolutely fact. And we sit and drink and we argue, and so I think the other thing that we do is we make up little stories. And very often we have a little story in our head, and the more we keep telling that story, the more we start to believe it until it becomes real. But it isn't really real. And I'm sure I'm the same. I'd probably say things that, well, I do. He says, no, that never happened. I said, well, you did, don't you remember? No, you're wrong. So I think our childhood is really fascinating, how we bring forward into our adult life these perceptions, these beliefs, which very often aren't real. They didn't really happen. And so, as I say, these things that are deeply seated within us limit what we can do in our lives. Very often they put limitations on it. We don't believe that we're good enough. We don't believe that we deserve to be successful in life. Because we've been told that you'll never make good of yourself as a couple. Or somewhere that other people have used. What was this one? You never do anything right, is what somebody said on one of the courses. So what they were doing really is it sets the boundaries, sets the feelings that you're going to fail in life, you'll never do any good. I've had enough of you, which obviously creates self-esteem, low self-esteem, and there's a bit of anger. I remember it's when I had a parents' day at school. I went to a grammar school in England, and one of the things I was awful at was art. I mean, I could not do art at all. And the art teacher told my mum and dad when they went to see them that I was a waste of space at the school because I couldn't do art. And to this day, I cannot do art, and it sort of plopped something into my brain that you're no good at doing art. Now, Kim is incredibly creative. The kids are very creative. They sit and do this thing. And if somebody said to me, there's $1,000, do a good picture, I couldn't do it. So we have to be careful with the language we use to youngsters, particularly very young children, because it has an influence, or it can have an influence on them. But you can change things. That's the important thing. And I think it was Mark Twain that actually said something like, much of my life has been a disaster, most of which never happened. So we have these thoughts that these are real things, and very often it's not based on reality.